And we are live unexpectedly on a Friday night, a party night. Here to talk about the Loki finale. And here's how you can tell I'm really excited to talk about it. My thumbnails never looked worse. Like, the bad handwriting is like so intentional or like whatever, but like it's literally never looked worse.
I think it would.
Go ahead.
The picture choice was great, but it does look like a child slash serial killer wrote it.
Yeah, like maybe a child serial killer, like why not both? Um I'm so excited to talk about Loki, and I'm going to be honest, that's pretty much all we're going to talk about because it's Loki finale week, but the only other thing that can rival my excitement is news. Without further ado, I'm turning it over to Kate. Blow us away.
Okay, so I'm just going to come back with my typical Jane Austen updates. Pride and Prejudice inspired dating show on Peacock.
Oh my
That
god, this was
sounds
made for me.
like it was made for you and it was made to torture me because it's making me want to watch reality TV just to see what it actually is. And I'm like, I
Yes.
don't, why? Also, because of the groups that I'm in online, I found the sign up sheet.
Did you? Please say you did. Please tell me you signed up. Kate.
I did not sign up, but I read the entire thing.
Please sign up.
It's
Will
10
everybody please
pages.
go bully Kate into joining this show? I would love that so much.
No, no, no.
Let me
But
find the sign up sheet. Watch
oh,
me
it was
sign you
so
up.
funny. I will email it to you. So I found it. It is insane.
Also, I apologize. It
Well,
sounds like there's a bit of a delay. So if I'm interrupting you,
it's
as
a
usual,
very big
it's not
delay.
on purpose.
It's a significant delay.
Okay.
No big deal. While she's looking for that, uh, a couple weeks ago, I talked about a movie coming out on Netflix called The Last Letter from Your Lover. It will be coming out July 23rd. And again, on my typical predictable train, because I'm really there for just time. And they released their single that is supposed to be in that soundtrack today. So I've been listening to that on repeat
Is
today.
it bomb? Did it live up to your wildest dreams?
It's so good. It's different. It sounds very Paul Simon, but that's what I like. So it's great.
I'm going to go listen to it after this.
Uh, it's pretty good. Then we have started to receive more information about the new Marvel show on Disney Plus, What If. That's going to be fun, interesting. I don't know if I'll watch all the episodes, but there's definitely ones that seem like the having Peggy Carter be Captain Britain. Obviously, I want to watch that. And then the last thing I bring is less of a news and more of just like I found this out and I feel like I have to share it. So the same guy that wrote Loki, Michael Waldron, wrote Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So it gives me hope that he's going to contain like the same storytelling and quality, at least with the writing.
Mm-hmm.
But he also wrote on Heels, Stephen Amell's new show.
He wrote, wait, hold on, you cut out there. He wrote Stephen Amell's new show?
Yeah, he wrote Heels for Stephen Amell's new show.
Oh, I have not watched that. Is it good?
I haven't watched it. I don't even know if it's aired yet, but I was just kind of doing some like research about when the Multiverse of Madness was coming out, and I just recognized the name about the writer, and I put it all together, and so then I went to that page and I saw his writing credits. I was like, "What?"
That's so
Give me a minute. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Huh. The guy who wrote Stephen Amell's new thing also was involved in the writing of Loki. Who would have guessed?
Yes.
That's really interesting.
It's very interesting. So that's all the news I bring today.
I'm going to be honest. That's some of your best best work yet. You know, there were a few
Thank
weeks
you.
out there that were like an 11 out of 10, but this was a really strong one. I
Thank you.
am going to sign you up for Pride and Prejudice reality dating, Kate. Like I have to. I have to. You have to
Well,
get like,
seeing as there's like you have to videotape yourself and like submit things and like it's like it's insanely long. I read through it, like the whole thing.
here's
Yes,
here's why that's
I
good
won't be
though.
signing up.
Here's why that's good. Like, if you're dating somebody that you meet in real life, like you have to actually like go out with them a bunch of times before you figure out that they're like not crazy at least or whatever. With this, the show's pre-screening everybody for you. Like they're going to pre-screen anybody who's like secretly a felon. They're going to pre-screen anybody who doesn't pass a psych eval, whatever. You know what I mean? Like they make money if they set you up with what you want. And if what you want is a Mr. Darcy and they can do that, just saying.
Okay, Cammie.
Listen, reality dating is not that bad. Do I speak from personal experience? No, absolutely not. But do I watch so much of it? Yes. Like it's all horrible, but there's always the chance that you would be the exception.
Yeah, but as a fan of statistics, rather not.
Occasionally I'm a fan of statistics as well. So let's transition over to the world of Mr. and Mrs. Loki and this finale. I would like to start off with a rating of just the finale. So, not Loki as a whole, but just the finale. What would you rate it like on the 1 to 5 scale?
So if it were just the finale of just a TV show, and it was just a TV show, like a 6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was really hyped about it at the very beginning, and I was okay by the end, but the middle chunk of that episode, I had some major problems with as it being a finale, but I don't think the rest of the internet shares with me, but that's fine. But I would evaluate it much differently in other contexts.
Yeah. So if it was just like an episode in the show, similar to that one that we felt like had almost finale-ish vibes, like it would have been ranked higher. Is that right?
No, if it were just so if there was no second season, or if it wasn't leading into that Multiverse of Madness, I would rate it a 6. But in that context, I'd rate it more like a 7 or an 8.
Okay.
So it's only good because I understand the purpose it is playing. But if it were serving as a finale in its own self-contained story, it'd be a low 6.
Okay. See, for me, I felt like it had pacing issues while still giving me what I wanted. Like all of the moments that I kind of wanted out of the finale, like big dramatic X, Y, and Z, it had. Did I want a big dramatic romantic moment? Did I want a interesting reveal of the big bad? Did I want dramatic, like it had all those moments, but it felt like it had pacing issues. There were moments where it felt slow, and then at the end, it was suddenly over. So I don't know. I don't know whether they were doing kind of a more traditional model of slow, 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 bam, pack everything in the end, and suddenly it's over. And that's why I got that feeling. Or if it's just in the middle, there were 1 or 2 particular scenes that felt suspended and not necessarily in a good way.
I think part of it might be my issue. So with the whole explanation that you get with the He Who Remains, that is like over a third of the episode is just sitting in that office with him, and it's him explaining like the threats of the multiversal war and what has happened and what could happen again. My issue with it is they took way too long with that, and I understand why they did. I understand that basically this scene is going to be used to explain the events of the rest of Phase 4. That if they don't clearly explain what's going to happen here, people are going to be very confused. And when you start involving the concepts of time travel and reality, you have to be very clear with what rules you're going to be following.
So they're trying to do the exposition sure now so that they don't have to do it in the movie and start slow in the movie.
I just felt like it was an over. Yeah. And I got it. I understood why that was there, and I gave it a little leeway. My issue is I still think they over-explained. I found it very boring. Yeah, like you said, it was a pacing issue. But, I mean, they really took you through it. And I know there are some people on the internet who were highly confused by that, and that is perfectly fine. I'm not judging anybody for not getting it or being very confused by the time travel things. But because I've seen so many things with time travel in the story, and I enjoy part of the mystery of how it's all going to pan out, I didn't like how much it just spelled it out in the finale. But like I said, if we take it out of context of it being the finale and we just say, oh, it's an episode, or it's going to be used as exposition for the next movie, the next season of the show, I can let it slide. But it's still not my favorite thing that they've done.
I think exposition is not one of my favorite things to consume, but in a place and time where I know I'm going to get it and it's delivered well, it can still be great. In this case, the exposition was not one of my favorite things to consume, but it was just in a space where I wouldn't naturally expect to find exposition, a finale, after I've got to know these characters and I'm ready for the story to move forward. And I understand, because this is all setting up for the movie, that this is actually the beginning of a story, not the end. So exposition goes with the beginning. Like, I get it, I do. But it was still, I still wanted it to feel like a finale. And again, it was giving me everything I wanted. It was just bam, 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 quick things I wanted, and then long exposition. And it wasn't that I didn't want the exposition. It's just that it didn't feel like this huge reveal at this time that was like, here's shocking information that makes everything else behind this make sense. It's more like, oh, here's shocking information that will make everything in front of it make sense. It will make Multiverse of Madness make sense. So there's delayed gratification there. I'm an inherently impatient person. I think we all are when watching things like this. So you're going through a lot of exposition with no immediate gratification afterwards of that doing something for you. I will also say, I think I was somewhat spoiled by shows like WandaVision or even Falcon and Winter Soldier, where I would say each episode got better as the series went on. Now, I liked WandaVision better than Falcon and Winter Soldier, but both of them had like a growth trajectory. Both of them got better with each episode to me, such that the WandaVision finale was the best episode in the series. This was not the best episode of the Loki series to me. The one that I kind of picked on a bit, where that was like in that weird fantasy world, and it kind of started off like a D&D campaign, but then it ended really cool, and she taught him how to enchant, and they had this like really vulnerable moment. That was the best episode in this whole situation for me.
That one, or the one, like episode 4. Those 4 and 5 were the best episodes for me. But so this finale feels very, and you're gonna understand this, the Arrowverse, in the sense that there's one show in these 3 shows that we've watched so far that has really paid service to a crossover event. Now, it's not the best of the 3 like Arrow was, but it had to pay its way. And I think because it has more seasons, it has more potential, they could kind of get away with it. And I don't mind it as much, whereas the other ones were truly the big series. but it still was it stifled potential with that they had going on with the characters that they were using. It wasn't bad. I don't hate it. I am not like really bummed out. It doesn't make me think that they don't have great potential to do stuff with any of the characters that we've discussed in the future. It's just a little frustrating that this show was, to me, out of the three, the second best, and the finale was the worst.
Mm-hmm.
At least as it served as a show finale.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question then. Given that, well, let me ask two questions at the same time. For both of us, it sounds like we're saying we expected a little better. So, what went right this series that sets us up to expect better? So, what was the highlight or the strength of this series, particularly as it compares to other Marvel series? And then, is there that high point in the finale? So I'm going to use WandaVision as an example, and I'm sure you could give a way better example than I could on this. But what goes right with WandaVision is this meshing of TV mediums in order to both make a comment about the TV medium and tell a story. They do that to increasingly complex degrees that even aside from the whole theme of grief, that is the story that they're telling, they do that aspect, that complex use of an advancing TV medium to make a meta commentary on it. So, what was that in Loki that they were trying to do, and did that element even fall in the finale?
So, I will give them praise. Out of the three shows, I think WandaVision did the best analysis and like, deconstruction of characters. Loki was the second best. And through the first 5 episodes, it did a great job of actually taking, this Loki was taken from the timeline right at the events of New York, where he was trying to steal the free will of the people of New York. He was trying to make them basically minions of his control. And this kind of somewhat overt, somewhat covert in some areas, like choosing bad or good, or like getting over his issues with narcissism versus self-loathing, which were definitely elements. He also had to come to terms with the reality that you have to give people free will. And as a character, like throughout, he was vouching and fighting more and more for free will. What gives me pause is that he had gone completely on the other end. He was against free will. He wanted to take control of people. And then by the end of episode 5, he was fighting to free people's will. He was going after the guy that was controlling everybody, everything like that. One of the other big letdowns for me in the finale was that he switched sides again. Now, his was much more from his was more from the side of like mercy and not wanting war and bloodshed, and I truly believe he didn't want the throne, but it's still like they could have done a better job of picking who was going to kill him, or the rationale for killing, or what sides they were going to take. I think they could have done a more nuanced fight scene between him and Sylvie. I still liked the fight scene we got. It was very fun as a person who likes them together, but it was not the full, it wasn't as gratifying for their personal character arcs as it could have been, given the context of he finally understanding the importance of free will, and her starting off basically having a good heart for Loki, and kind of transversing this way into wanting, like, it would have been almost better if she would have been like, no, let's keep free will, because let's not make free will, because that would have been her not wanting to destroy the timeline anymore. And even though she felt anger towards this invisible entity for all of her life, it doesn't seem like it's actually going to give her any vengeance. It's just going to give free will, which is not something she's always really vouched for. But him being the one that instills free will would have been a full arc for him, and then we would have had time later on to finish the arc for her.
That makes sense. And ultimately, all of the switching sides, I think it was in the most basic sense too fast for too few episodes. For us to care and really get behind and understand a side switch, I feel like you need a pretty substantial amount of story. I don't have a number to put to that. I don't have a certain amount of screen time to put to that. But if there's a character switching sides every episode, you don't care about it because that's essentially a case of the week. Mobius, I think, was a really good example of this. I've been complaining about him being flaky the entire time. He continues to be flaky throughout this, but what I was really pleased to see was Ravonna, however you say her name, actually calls him out on it. And I know that she doesn't end as a good guy and he doesn't end as a bad guy. It's not that simple. It's fine. That's fine. We can have gray characters, whatever. But when she's telling him, like, I've known you for like a billion years and I've had your back, you've had mine, we've been like basically besties. Earlier in the season, I thought they were a potential romantic pairing. Maybe they still are. I don't know. He's very weak, so perhaps not. But when she's calling him out on that, every single word is right. She is right. He has been flaky. He ditched her for a Loki after 2 seconds. And maybe he just serves as a plot function to show how convincing a Loki can be, that somebody can so easily switch sides based on the influence of a Loki, or in this case, the Loki. Maybe that's the case, but I think changing as much as he did and being as wishy-washy as he didn't make Loki seem convincing, because it seemed like Loki was trying to convince somebody who literally had no spine at all. If it had been him wearing him down till finally in the finale he betrays his longtime friend of a billion years, fine, cool, whatever. But this whole back and forth thing of like, maybe he has him, maybe he's, I think it was some weird kind of like friendship, will they, won't they? But it wasn't sold well. It was like they did and now they're not, and then they did, now they're not. A will they, won't they, in a friendship sense, in a enemy versus whatever sense, in a romantic sense, is where you're constantly towing this line of you don't know if you're on the same side, and it kind of, there might be evidence one end to the other, but it's in the finale that you figure out which side they're on. That wasn't what was going on here. They were taking clear stances. They just kept switching them. It wasn't some double agentry. So Sylvie was kind of towing that line of, you can almost more interpret her actions as like double agentry, but with Mobius especially, it was just changing his mind all the time, and frankly, Loki switching sides reflected that. Maybe that's intentional to build some sort of bromance. It's fine, but that wasn't, I don't think that was paced well across the whole season. I don't mean to sound like a hater though. I still enjoyed it. I'm really critiquing when there's a lot more positive than there is negative. Consider, for example, Sylvie. So with that, I transition to what was your favorite part of this episode?
The thing is, I enjoyed it while I was watching it, but the more and more I think about it, I don't like it. So that's the problem I'm having with it. Because I liked, it's one of those things that when they introduced the guy, He Who Remains, there was a little, because I could immediately tell he was going to be like a comedic character. And I was like, this could be done really well or really poorly. I will say I'm glad that they did it how they did it. They didn't make him any more comedic. They were subverting, which is fine, but there's a level of when you cross like subverting expectations and then just like laughing at the audience. Mm-hmm. So they subverted the expectation of it being like this all-powerful, like evil creature, and made it into just kind of this guy who was trying to do right, has like good intentions, but like morally questionable execution. And is like kind of like a comedic character. That's fine. I'm just glad that they didn't go any funnier because it would be laughing in the face of the audience, which is actually to me a plus because it did kind of surprise me how they presented him without it being kind of egregious or anything like that.
Right. I know it's a little early to transition to where do we go from here, but since they left us with so much exposition, I feel like that's the real main question. So, where do we go from here? Not even in terms of Loki and Sylvie's storyline, which obviously I care about, because we know that they're going to get a season two. They left us with that at the end. Love that they left us with that at the end. But going into Multiverse of Madness, where does this leave the broader participation of this team?
So I did a tiny bit of research. I looked up the Spider-Man movie will be coming out before the Multiverse of Madness.
Far From Home?
And I mean, I don't even have to like look at. Yeah, no, I think it's No Way Home.
Oh,
I mean, and I don't even have to like look out on the internet to know that there's this whole theory about how all the Spider-Mans of recent history are going to be in that movie. Whether that's true or not, I do know that Doctor Strange will be in that movie, so obviously it is going to play some part in the build up to the Multiverse of Madness. Um, but in the Multiverse of Madness specifically, I expect that it's going to kind of involve, that stereotypical first montage of him recruiting, or like the
yeah.
three main characters coming together. Um, and I would assume it's may follow Loki trying to explain to Doctor Strange what has happened and help in some ways fight the war and also try to find Sylvie. I think it's going to be Doctor Strange basically looking at the two of them like, I cannot believe you two have done this. And then Wanda being there as the most powerful person on the team. Um, and her being more, I think she's going to be more calm and like she's going to be more resolute in who she is and far more powerful. She's obviously been in a cabin studying magic. Um, but I think it is definitely going to involve her finding her kids. I would assume that uh, he should, who should he who remains. I almost said who should not be named. That's Voldemort. He who remains is going to be the main big bad, but I think a lot of it will probably actually be just the small big bads that they'll encounter in each different timeline that they visit.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be kind of more of like a sinister. We'll probably see that the dragon-like thing that we saw, Elias,
Yep.
I think is what it's called. I'm not
I felt like that had
entirely
a
sure
very
exactly what the
cinematic-esque quality to it.
yes, like the I will say the CGI in all three of these shows have been fantastic, but I thought that that was actually even better. So my guess is they probably developed it for Multiverse of Madness, and then they were able to use what they developed in Loki as a precursor.
Mm.
Um, and I've watched the other Doctor Strange movie, and it did actually kind of look like the villain in that. I don't remember what his name was or whatever, but it kind of had similar qualities. Um, yeah, I don't know the specific plot, obviously, of the movie, but I can tell it's going to have a lot to do with Wanda and Loki, and basically Doctor Strange just kind of being his Tony Stark 2.0 self, being both judgmental and begrudgingly helpful through
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing.
There's such an interesting pairing for one very specific reason that nobody wants to talk about except me. Not pairing, trio, I guess. And by that, I'm referring to Doctor Strange, Loki, and Wanda. That is such an interesting trio because I cannot give you a single romantic pairing out of that three, not one. I do not
No.
see a single one of, I don't see any combination of any of them, all three, any of that. I want romance and everything, don't get me wrong. And I'm not just saying this because I want Loki with Sylvie and I want Wanda with Vision, blah, blah, blah. Like, obviously I do. But I also understand, like, this is Marvel and every movie they'll,
Mhm.
you know, put together someone with someone else and ignore all their past romances. With those three, I cannot see a single ship. They're welcome to try to prove me wrong. Am I crazy?
So I know almost close to nothing about the comics. I did have a friend tell me though that in some of the comics there is some romantic connections occasionally between Doctor Strange and Wanda. Now, whereas I am with you 90% of the time, I'm like romance or no thanks. I am looking at this and seeing that, and I don't want to say like no thanks, because we're like there's no shade for anybody that likes these characters, but I don't like Doctor Strange and I don't like Tony Stark. I
Okay.
don't like them. Um, so and that's the whole reason I said that about Doctor Strange being him. But I don't want that, especially seeing him. He is a good guy now, and he has moments of deep sincerity or anything like that. But he has a very judgmental meaning about him. And even though he is was at one point a medical professional, I don't see him being completely understanding of the psychological imbalance in both Loki and Wanda, specifically
Mm-hmm.
Wanda, but they both basically are really high need of therapy. And
Yeah.
I don't actually see Strange being that some of their actions are evil and like need to be condemned. I still argue that Wanda's at least an anti-hero, but she has made mistakes. She has done wrong. However, in like she did not want to, she did not mean to hurt people. I don't think that there needs to be that level of immediate judgment because I sent you a video. I don't know if you watched it, but it also
I
pointed out
haven't
another
yet, but I want
psychological condition
to.
that she had. I will give you a brief little hint as to what it is. So I kind of got close to like reading this when I was doing all that research, psychology research when we were watching it. But there's a thing called maladaptive daydreaming, which essentially is like you dream up these daydreams when you go through dissociative periods or like really traumatic periods um, to basically help you cope better. And it is pleasant. You were in a happy place. Much like the Tahiti, he he might be understanding. He might be a good guy about it, and that would be great. I would love to be proven wrong about this. That Strange would be well understanding, would not immediately condemn them. But from what I have seen of him, I don't see him as being an entirely pleasant person. And it's frustrating because like I see the obvious connection with him being like very analytical, uh, like the INTP style character. So I should relate to that, but I resent it extremely. I don't like it. I don't like how discompassionate he is. Um, and for a character like Wanda, who will not, she does not need any more people judging her or being mean or condemning her mental breakdown. I don't want that.
Yeah.
So I hope that that's not a case.
I think that's
But
fair. And the thing is, I don't like Tony Stark at all. One of my least favorite comic book characters that's been brought to the movie screen. I actively did not watch a lot of the Iron Man movies because of it. But I saw enough to know I disliked. Doctor Strange, I don't have the same kind of negative reaction to. I don't love him. I don't hate him. Um, I don't see him as like this coy, charming playboy, but I do see him as emotionally distant, like you're saying. And that's not necessarily what I want for Wanda. Um, for Loki, with him tapping into this new well of emotion, I guess I could potentially see Loki and Doctor Strange or Loki and Wanda, because he has spent so long trying to stifle his emotions, and he supposedly had a breakthrough in these 6 episodes. So we might see him in a different space where he's trying to express feelings. I could see him being paired up with either of them, I suppose. But I don't like any ship. I'm not pre sold on any ship. They're open to sell me on a particular ship and really change somebody's character to make it work. But I just find it interesting going into this that I'm not sold. And I do also want to draw your attention to a question in the chat. If you have any thoughts, from Stormy Wood, she says, what do you ladies think of all the Emmy noms for the Marvel shows? So that is WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, and Loki and Mandalorian. She says, do you think if this wasn't the pandemic times that they would get this many nominations? Hello, Stormy. Excellent question. I could tell by Kate's face she has an answer, so I'm going to turn this over to her.
So, when we were the first few episodes, we were going, if she doesn't win an Emmy nomination, at least we're going to be pissed. And I'm so glad that she got it. I will say, unless I'm just oblivious to it, it actually feels like during the panorama, we have had actually more limited series.
Yeah.
So there's actually been a stiffer competition, because I loved WandaVision, as no secret. But I also know that I thought you might like the Queen's Gambit more than WandaVision. And that is a
Yeah, I think I did actually.
competing nomination. I liked WandaVision more, but I would definitely say that Queen's Gambit is a tight second. And
I'd be so comfortable with either one winning. Queen's Gambit, like for me personally, I like better. But if I were trying to give it like as an award for excellence, I would not be able to like choose and say one is more excellent than the other, if that makes sense.
Yes, so both of the actresses in the show, in terms of the supporting cast, are all nominated. I love Anya Taylor-Joy. Don't get me wrong, I've loved every movie I've seen her in. I will say that one particularly, I want Elizabeth Olsen to win because of the amount of everything behind it. Will I be upset if Anya Taylor-Joy wins? Absolutely not. I think it's a great win either way. But those two are the two movies or two limited series and associated actresses that I would want to win. I also know the Crown is nominated. The Crown gets enough publicity; it doesn't need any more.
It's not as good.
So it has its strong moments, but no, it's definitely good. It has its strong moments. Don't get me wrong. It just is not quite as it doesn't stand out as much. It doesn't do anything groundbreaking. It's just telling the gossip of the royal family, which I love to watch, but it's not as good and it could be better.
Yeah, I think, okay. So limited series is whatever the plural is of that. I think, they were starting to pick up popularity. They were certainly starting to pick up a couple Emmy noms.
Right.
Yes. Prior to the pandemic, but I think the nature of the pandemic kind of boosted them a little bit, because I think a lot more like A-list movie actors are willing to be a part of like a limited series, just because the format, go into a micro bubble for a while, whatever. So that the pandemic may have served as a catalyst for the production of limited series, like high quality limited series is occurring. But that was certainly on track to do that anyways. And a lot of these, were preconceived, written, budgeted, approved, and in motion prior to the pandemic. Where Stormy's question comes into play is, do we think that the Emmy nominations are because of the pandemic? And I'm kind of interpreting that to mean, do we think that because a lot of TV was on hold, a lot of movies were on hold as well, for that matter, and we're going into like a TV shortage, I suppose, or we were for a while. I mean, I remember there were some times, now granted, I was just ignoring a lot of good television and watching trash, which I'm going to continue to do. But there were some times where like most of the shows that I would normally be watching on a weekly basis were gone. And I was like, I guess I'm catching up on Manifest. Great. That may, just less competition may have had something to do with it. And I wonder if we're going to get a resurgence, like a new golden age of television post pandemic, where people are making a lot of these high quality limited series to try to catch that, catch that high that, The Handmaid's Tale and The Queen's Gambit and WandaVision, me giving only female led examples because that's all I care about, that they
I
created.
Yeah, I I mean, I've definitely seen limited series before the pandemic, but they were never as talked about as much.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't realize how much I liked them. I have, through the pandemic, realized how much I liked them in the sense that they have both the advantages of both TV and movie. So TV has a far larger time to explore characters, tell a story, establish world. There's just more time. Um, and you also get the added benefit of being able to kind of segment your story, uh, take advantage of those cliffhangers to get more fan interaction, of course. And then with a movie, you are able to conceive of a more uh, full product before it's kind of presented. So that way, there's no gaps in creativity. There's never these like storytelling lulls where it switches people and it's not great. I'm looking at CW, but with the limited series, it has that expanded time for movies. It has that time for people to interact as a fan while still having a start, middle, end conceived before it's ever presented.
I will say on this topic, and also because we're almost out of time, I'm going to use my where do we go from here to say that relatedly, you should watch Kevin Can F Himself, because that I think is a really good example of really high quality TV. Someone who, she had previously done Schitt's Creek, but could easily have made the jump to movie and chose to say, leading a high quality TV show. And something that can function as a limited series. I'm not sure if they've said whether it's going to be a limited series or not. There's sort of a mystery throughout it that it would kind of give away if you knew that there were multiple seasons or not. But that's where I suggest we go from here until, Multiverse of Madness unfurls its wings. Stormy says several shows like Succession were hampered by the pandemic. Yeah, I think that's rolling back out very soon. But that was one that was kind of an Emmy sweeper. And she also says, I wonder if Loki will get many nominations. It's not limited, and other shows will be back before Emmy next year. That's a good question. I think Loki has the potential to get Emmy nominations if they get a season where they're not setting up so clearly for another movie. If there's a season where they're telling the story of the Lokis and it's not serving as exposition, um, we've come, all of us have come from seeing like Arrow serve as the Trojan horse to push in a plot for another pilot or another whatever. And we've seen that from other shows and other movies as well. And it always does a disservice to the base. And I think Loki having to set up for this, it's an honor, I suppose, that it's the one that most sets up for it because it's the one that follows all the others and it gets to carry a lot of pretty key exposition points. But as a standalone, I don't think it stands quite alone as a complete story the way WandaVision does. So it's a double-edged sword or whatever the metaphor is. If they get to do a season that stands alone from a plot, I think they'll be okay. Kate, what are your thoughts?
I agree. And I was harping on Loki. I still think it was a great show. The finale was decent. the show itself did well. I liked it. Um, and I don't think it's going to be as disserviced or as hampered as Arrow was in previous seasons for the same thing. But I do agree that if we get a season that either like basically takes the collateral damage of what happens in Multiverse of Madness and is like responsible for like putting it back together, kind of like filling in the gaps if it's not as big and action packed, kind of like what they were doing in the first season, giving us that exposition, but instead the I don't know, but I just think it had definitely has that potential. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it did what it was supposed to do. I'm excited for Multiverse of Madness, but WandaVision did that too. WandaVision got me very excited for her next appearance, and WandaVision also stood alone as her own story. So, it is possible, but I also might be biased.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I agree.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I agree that WandaVision, it was the best out of the three by far to me, but
Yeah.
Loki has potential still.
Yeah. Well, Kate, I appreciate you joining me for a wild Friday night wild Friday night talking about Loki and nothing else. I didn't even preload any Bachelor pictures in the sidebar. I didn't even put what we read or watched this week else on the agenda. I only snuck in one tiny, tiny mention of Kevin can F himself. This was a really fun Loki only discussion, and I suspect that even though the season has wrapped, we're still going to have a few Marvel things to discuss these next couple weeks as we draw towards the next installment. Okay, well,
Yes,
Kate.
I suspect. And Arrowverse with Superman and Lois, because that was really good
Yes.
this week.
I'm so excited to discuss Superman and Lois, and less excited but kind of amused to discuss what's going on with Flash as well. So that will be on the docket for this upcoming
Mm.
Wednesday. Also, David Ramsey's coming to Dragon Con. Very excited.
Mm.
Okay, I'm going to get us out of here so grandma can go to bed and you crazy kid can go have a fun Friday night. I will talk to you next week, same time, different place, or same place, different time.